Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. And I've got a real good friend of mine and friend of the show for many years, Ewan Downie. Ewan has built a few companies. Two of them were takeovers, and I think he's got a lot of insights into the business that are helpful for investors in the business. And I wanted to get Ewan on now that he's a venture capitalist. How are you doing, Ewan?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm very good. Your biggest success, I think, Ewan, was Premier Gold. Just to give some people an idea of that, um, several years ago, there was interest in the Geraldton area that built up because an explorer was making some noise. And your company, Premier Gold, went in there and got a whole bunch of ground. And now that project is one of Canada's new and important gold mines.
Yeah, Premier was a great company to run. Unfortunately, during the process of building Premier, we brought in a joint venture partner to assist in the development of Greenstone, what is now Equinox's flagship operation since they acquired Premier. But we had some issues with our joint venture partner, ended up in court, and it really took away from what I think Premier should have become. Didn't take away from the asset quality, but learned a lot of things through that process. When you're doing a joint venture, any agreement, make sure you look at everything in the agreement, not just try to hurry it along. Also, both in Premier Wolfden and in the early stages of I-80, the highest share price that each company achieved was during the exploration phase. And as soon as we started talking about development, is when you start to tail off. So your talk about investors is that Lassonde curve to me is a very real phenomenon. And you should look at companies that are in that successful exploration stage, like we were when we were drilling off hard rock. The resource kept getting bigger and bigger, and the share price went higher and higher. And then a lot of companies are actually acquired during that phase, but when they're not, the next option for a company is to develop it. You either stop and say, well, nobody took me out, and just stop, or else you have to move into permitting, economic work, et cetera. And that takes years, if not decades, in instances. And often you see the investor interest tail away. And once a mine is then built, like we're seeing now with Skeena and Armitage, these companies are now achieving all-time highs during the development phase, and another one would be Foran. So, I think I've learned a lot as not only an executive in this industry, but also as an investor, at when to get in, when to get out, and that low opportunity in the pre-development is actually a big buying opportunity, and yeah, it's been Premier Gold Mines was a discovery essentially we made of an open pit around the historic mine. And it was an acquisition made through Barrick. We acquired one of their non-core projects that they were sitting on. And another thing I've learned is that there are a lot of deposits sitting within other companies that aren't being advanced because they're not the priority. And companies who are able to monetize on that or make acquisitions of those assets are often the most successful, because these can be near world-class deposits. And that's what my new business, Giant Venture Capital, is about, is to pursue those type of opportunities.
That's interesting that you say that, Ewan, because what it looks like to me is some of these majors at Newmont, for example, are trying to get what they would call their second tier of projects, monetize those, but those can be company making assets for a smaller company. They just don't meet the needs of the majors that are so big nowadays.
Yeah, that's a great point. And a good example is we're about to launch our group is about to launch a new company called NVO Minerals, who I actually just introduced you to.
Yes.
And NVO Minerals was formed with a Glencore asset. So Glencore, the world's largest mining company, has a major had a major property package in northern Quebec, within the Abitibi province of Quebec, one of the most significantly mineral endowed regions you'll find anywhere in the world. And they had this large property. They finished mining 2 years ago, not because they ran out of ore, but because the mine was too small for Glencore. And I think that's the opportunity for small companies. And NVO Minerals, that I expect will be trading next week, has successfully completed a deal to acquire one of these major projects from the world's largest mining company in what I believe was a very, very fair transaction, and reminds me of the early days of Premier, when we acquired Hard Rock and the stock was trading at about 25, 40 cents and ultimately went to $8. So those are the opportunities that I'm looking for in my future, not only in our business, but in investments that I will make in the future.
Yeah, I looked at Nouveau and it has I said I called it a wow factor. It's got a mill, it's got permits, it's got more material to mine, it's a huge land package, and wide open for exploration. And new discoveries have been made while Nouveau has been private, and it's an incredible project for a smaller company. Now, of course, it doesn't move the needle for a Glencore, but for a Nouveau sized company, it's a company maker.
Yeah, definitely. And a good example of these type of opportunities that come out would be exactly what Newmont is doing. And this Nouveau Glencore transaction is quite similar. So, as I said, Glencore is the world's largest mining companies. They need monster deposits to move the needle now. And a good example is the largest gold mining company, Newmont. They just went through that process of looking at their own portfolio and saying, Musselwhite, Eleanor, CC&V, these operations are now non-core because they're not quite good enough, or not quite big enough, or not quite of the quality. They're getting longer in the tooth type assets than brand new. And those are the opportunities that companies can really propel themselves into a different league. SSR is a good example. When they did a deal to acquire Marigold from Goldcorp when it was non-core, and it's been producing since they bought it for 10 years and has many years ahead of it, and has made a ton of cash for the company. And those type of companies like the SSR, the Orlas, et cetera, their interest is growing, but they're more positioned financially to grow through small to mid-tier size assets instead of going after the monsters. Because when you go after those, your competition is Barrick, Newmont, Agnico, et cetera. And so if you find the right opportunities and the companies and make the right deals, there's a lot of profits to be made in the mineral sector, despite the state of the market today.
And what I also find impressive about Nouveau is that, you just talked about the development discount window and how painful that can be. But where there is a sweet spot, that sweet spot can be very profitable before they bring something back into production. And so that's what also excited me about Nouveau is there's a fast track to that sweet spot.
Yeah, it's Glencore has maintained the mill on site that was operating only 2 years ago. In 2025, we get to take over. The company gets to take over the milling operation, or the milling asset, and that will allow the company to accelerate its growth into being what will hopefully be a near-term producer again. The team that we've assembled there is quite good, or very good. the CEO is Peter Van Alphen, and I know him well because he was our chief operating officer at Premier, and he's one of the best operators, developers that I know. This is so we put him in the CEO after the takeover of Premier, and the CFO is Steve Filipovic, who is my CFO at Premier. So essentially rebuilding the Premier team in NVO and looking to do it again.
So
Is
this
a good
is
way to
your
put it.
first venture under great or giant
Giant.
venture capital.
Yeah, essentially it's the first one, and plan is to do several of these over the next several years. Um, had made a lot of relationships in the industry with larger companies. We have a credibility with these companies that they'll talk to us about potential asset deals. And in fact, we're currently working on a second project with Glencore that we hope to bring forward in the coming months or sometime in 2025. You'll hear more about it.
Well, one thing that you've always been really good at, Ewan, is spotting good projects and getting them at good prices and then enhancing them with the truth machine, the drilling. Um, and it sounds like that's what you've done with Nuvo, and that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and it gets me back more to my roots. I don't pride myself in being a mine builder or a mine operator, and really, I don't want to be. I don't want to run a mine. I'd rather find them. And now with through Giant, I'm going back to my roots, and we'll do more acquisition type transactions, and then hopefully very successful exploration, and then capitalize on that first phase of the Lassonde curve, which can be quite exciting for companies.
Well, you're one of the most talented exploration guys I know in the business, and I'm not the only one that says that. You're also a very good deal maker, and it sounds like your giant venture capital is a perfect situation for you at where you are in your career, Ewan.
Yeah, it lets me kind of do things at my own pace when you're not in the public realm and dealing day to day with the fluctuations of gold prices and copper prices and what's happening with who's going to be the president of the United States. It's quite easy to operate, and I've run multiple public companies, and it's become the regulatory environment just gets more and more difficult. When you are in a public company, a lot of pressures on the management team, whereas in a private venture like Nuvo has been for the last 2 years, you're not scrutinized on a daily basis based on your share performance. And it's a lot easier to build the company. And then when you come out, hopefully you come out in a position of strength. At Nuvo, we've already made new discoveries. We're drilling one of those off as we speak. This is a massive land package. Glencore did a large-scale geophysical program, what we call the North Domain, over about 80 kilometers in that area. And they had 80 geophysical targets identified in that program. Glencore drilled one about 7 years ago, and it was a massive sulfide discovery. And when we took over the project 2 years ago, we picked another one of those 80s to test, and we discovered what we call the Renaissance Zone immediately. And it's another massive sulfide. So I look at it and say, well, there's 78 plus additional anomalies here to be drilled. And I'm hoping that not only two of those 80 are successful, that a lot more will be in the future. And then the gold potential of the project was completely overlooked by what were previously were entire base metal companies who operated. Detour Lake, one of the I believe it's Canada's largest gold mine, is along strike to the west of the property, and the Casa Berardi operation is immediately to the south. So there's some pretty significant gold mines in the area, and this is one of the largest single contiguous land packages in the entire Abitibi, and essentially is being almost completely overlooked for its gold potential. And that's where I see as a big opportunity for explorationists like myself to benefit from is look at what other people haven't looked at and hopefully make some significant headway in the future in that regard.
Well, when you were talking about geophysics there, I had a pretty great mentor in geophysics. His name's Gennon McDowell, and at one time he was the world exploration manager for Anglo. And he said something to me a long time ago that I've always paid attention to. He says, sometimes the magic works and sometimes the magic doesn't work when it comes to geophysics. And the bigger point that he was making is that, you need to find the right geological survey that can then be backed up with drilling. And then you've got something. And that's what it sounded like you were explaining when you talked about all these geophysical anomalies, and the first two you drill are discoveries.
Yeah, geophysics can and can't be a good tool. It can be get you on a lot of red herrings. Most of my geophysical knowledge I learned from my father, who was a geologist and but very versed in geophysics. And I started doing field surveys. So I was out in the bush running the geophysical instruments. Did a lot of work in the diamond field. So you're looking for the bullseyes, and I did a lot of work at the Musselwhite mine before it was in operation. And with geophysics, they were looking for certain fold structures and fault structures to target, and got a good education in the field on geophysics. So it's a great tool. It works better for base metals, though.
Yeah.
Gold, it's really you just get lucky,
Or
and
helps
a
you
lot
with
of
the
times.
structures in gold.
Yeah, you're just looking for structures or contacts or certain areas there's gold mineralization in the past, and you try to find it. Whereas base metals, often these massive sulfide deposits show up as big conductors or magnetic features, so it's easier to pick out targets, in my view, using geophysics for base metals. And as you probably know from the Wolfden days, was basically a base metal company with a gold side. And then even with I-80, we were really active pursuing the Blackjack Hilltop FAD area, which was at base metals. I'm a huge fan of base metals. I always will be, because how integral these metals are to our everyday life. Like most people take for granted that you flick a light switch and your lights go on, but there's a reason for that, because there's copper wires or aluminum wires that they're using in some instances now that deliver electricity from a plant to your home when the lights turn on. And without those minerals,
We wouldn't be having this conversation without base metals. We wouldn't be
not a
doing
chance.
nothing without base metals.
Nothing. And it's such a small part of the S&P uh,
Tiny.
500 composite. Like it's this much is metals and mining, but AI is the talk of the town right now. And then Apple is, when you look at these companies, they rely on computers. And what are computers made out of? They're made out of mined materials. And we as a business have to do a lot better job promoting that, on why we're so important. If there's no mining, as you said, there's no call that we're having right now. There's no cell phone. There's no
No
car. There's no air.
car, no nothing, no house, no nothing.
Yeah. So and then as we talked just before we started this interview, I see I only have a couple moments left, but there's talks, or there's always ongoing tariff wars between different countries, and Trump's now talking about additional tariffs, and the Biden administration just put a new tariff on China, and China turned around and banned the export of germanium, gallium,
William.
and antimony to Western countries. And it took about a week for it to start to get picked up on mainstream media. But the day I saw that, I was like, wow, this is, people don't realize how significant that ban is, because we don't make germanium, gallium, uh, very little antimony. So, unless our governments truly embrace the resources we have, and I hope they do, we're going to be in trouble, because so much of the world's supply is controlled by places like China and Russia, who aren't exactly called our closest friends. So I think governments need to really wake up to how important resources are again. You can't You can't kill the oil industry um, just because you think you're saving the environment, like our prime minister is doing. There's important things that the industry does, and global warming is a natural phenomena. It's been going on for 10,000 years since the last
It'll
ice age.
it'll be
So
going on for the next billion years.
yeah, we're
Ewan,
not
you
going to.
touched on a couple of things there that I really appreciate because I've been trying to get the message across that our industry needs to do a better job about telling our story about how important it is. I don't know if I'm making any friends in the business by telling everybody that our business sucks at telling the story of how important mining is. But it's got to be said, and I'm glad to hear it from you as well, Ewan, that the industry needs to get off their butt and really tell the story of how important mining is, and get it out there to the politicians and the consumers. Because without mining, we got nothing. We're back in the Stone Age.
Yeah, well, like I said, Apple would not exist without mining, yet its market cap exceeds every single mining company combined. If you shut
Worldwide.
off mining, there's no more Apple phones being made, there's no more computers being made, and that business goes to zero. So, it is an important industry. We, as proponents of the industry, need to make sure we explain to people. You don't have to fight with the people who hate mining and are protesting. You need to explain them how important it is to our way of life, and
Absolutely.
if this green movement and moving more to electric components in your cars or your underground mining machinery is so important, we have to realize that those also require a lot of different metals, and we're a critical industry to our way of life. We're actually the most critical industry to the current way of life. And let's have a quick one on gold, because gold it's used in cell phones and it's used in certain environments, but it's really a store of wealth and a currency. And I'll just go back to that, how important metals are, because Bitcoin has performed fabulously of late. Unfortunately, I didn't profit from that because I'm really a non-believer. But if we don't make computers anymore, nobody can trade their Bitcoins. So it's in my view, kind of pretend money
Ewan,
in your
that the
computer.
cost of mining that Bitcoin now is like $80,000 a Bitcoin. Like they don't understand that even in the Bitcoin mining is important.
Yeah, it's a different type of mining, but it's harvesting a lot of energy to create what is a basically a computer generated form of currency. Whereas gold is something you can hold in your hand and you can use if things get dire. And it's really good to see that the Eastern countries like China just continues to look at the devaluation of the buying power of fiat currencies like the US dollar and the debt load that these are taking on, that you've done such an awesome job of pointing out, is not good for paper money.
No.
And it's really speaking to the need for every investor to be invested in or own gold, physical gold. I urge that everybody should have some gold and silver as a backup plan if it ever gets that bad. But also, the companies that mine that are very important as well.
Well, when I look at copper and base metals, I look at it as important to everything we do in the world. But when I look at gold, I think that that's the backbone of the financial or of the money and the debt, and some people think that the world is going to come to an end when we go back to a gold standard. I think that that is actually the best thing that can happen, is that we go back to a gold standard and have some rationality behind the debt and the money printing, because the debt system and the fiat currency system is broken, and the only thing that can fix it is gold.
Yeah, we have to or at least put some handcuffs on politicians to not just spend and pretend that money falls out of the air. um, because it doesn't. And it used to be so important for governments, even 10, 15 years ago, to balance the budget so that you're actually spending as much as you have. The Harper government, progressive conservative government here in Canada, when they handed over the keys, so to speak, to Trudeau and the Liberals, Canada had a balanced budget. Look at what Trudeau has done since he came into office. He's more than doubled Canada's national debt from every single prime minister before him put together. And people just act like that's okay now. And because I don't think enough people have lived through the hard times, and a lot of young people are trading who've never seen a major depression or seen like Germany did their money go to zero. Look at Zimbabwe. Their money
Yep.
is, you
Would have
wouldn't
been
use a
better off
Zimbabwe
owning
dollar to,
gold.
yeah. So,
And
you know,
you look back in time before the US was on off the gold standard, it was really king dollar back then because it was backed by gold, and gold was an important part of international trade. And I think the best thing that can happen to the world economy is going back in that direction. Back up your dollars with gold, back up your debt with gold, put some restrictions on central bankers being the drug dealer to the junkies, spenders of politicians. And it will be a good thing. Not everybody looks, a lot of people look at it like it would be horrible. Oh no, it's going to be a tragedy. It's not going to be a tragedy. It's going to be the best thing that could ever happen to the global economy.
I agree.
Take care, Ewan. We got to do this again soon.
Yeah, sounds good.
All
And I
righty.
will talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Better run. Thank you very much
Have a
for having
great
me on
day.
again.
Bye
Yep,
bye.
you too.